of January 2024. We have Councillors Allison, Anderson, Barker, Bradley, Brogan, Brown, Councillor Archie Buchanan, Councillor Matthew Buchanan, Councillor Kalikis, Councillor Carmichael. I understand Councillor Chalmers was having technical issues. I'll just check whether she's now joined the meeting. She's not joined us yet. We have Councillor Clark, Councillor Convery, we have the Provost, Councillor Corbett, Councillor Cowan, Councillor Cowie, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Dewar, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Fagan, Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Ferguson Miller, Councillor Frame, Councillor Fulton, Councillor Gowland, Councillor Gray, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Handybode, Councillor Horn, Councillor Horsham, Councillor Hose, Councillor Johnson-Dempsey. I'm just going to check whether we have Councillor Keats. We don't have Councillor Keat. We have Councillor Kerr, Councillor Lambie. I'll just check whether we've got Councillor Lennon. We don't have Councillor Lennon as yet. Councillor Lockhart, Councillor Logan, Councillor Loudon, Councillor Hugh MacDonald, Councillor Marsh. I'll just check whether we have Councillor McAdams. We don't have Councillor McAdams. Councillor McAllen, Councillor McClymont, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Leslie MacDonald, Councillor McDougall, Councillor McGeever, Councillor McLachlan. I have apologies from Councillor Nelson, Councillor Nugent, Councillor Ray. I'll just check whether we have Councillor Razak. We don't have Councillor Razak. Councillor Robb, Councillor Ross, Councillor Scott, Councillor Shearer, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Toner. I'll just check whether we've got Councillor Walker. We don't seem to have Councillor Walker. We have Councillor Watson and Councillor Williams. And with that, I'll hand you back to the Provost for today's business. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to ask for any declarations of interest. I'm going to declare an interest this morning for items 7 and 8. Both of those are, there's an element of discussion regarding Kilbride Hospice, and I'm going to demit the chair. And Bert Thompson, the Deputy Provost, will take over at that point. Councillor Logan.
Same thing, it would be the Kilbride Hospice.
Item 7 or 8 or both?
The 8.
Right, okay, thank you. 7 and 8 for myself. Okay, I'm moving on now to pages 3 to 16. Sorry, it's a bit remiss of me. I should have welcomed 2 new colleagues to the chamber this morning. No, we haven't got any new councillors, but we have 2 new legal members of our team this morning, and both young ladies are sitting at the back of the room. They'll welcome a nice smile, and we'll be kind to you. We won't ask your advice this morning. But it's nice to have them along. They've just recently been appointed, and this is one of their duties to start with, getting to know how the full council works. So welcome along, ladies. Okay, moving to minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 16. Are there any matters arising? Okay, can we now move? Can you second that, please?
Yeah, second that, Provost.
Moving to minutes of Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee. Can we agree those minutes? Thank you. Item 4, Armed Forces Covenant Day, pages 21 to 40. And I'll invite Geraldine McCann to speak to this, please.
Thank you, Provost. This report is just brought to the Council today, first of all, to advise you of the new Armed Forces Covenant duty. Now, this came into force following the Armed Forces Covenant Duty Act, which came into force in November 22. Now, the reason for the delay in bringing it to you is that required statutory guidance to follow, and the guidance was received during 2023, which really set out what we were expected to do to comply with the duty. The Council has signed up to the Armed Forces Covenant some time ago, first of all in 2012, as set out in the background to the report in section 3, but then again in 2018 when there was a refresh covenant we signed up again. We've also been a member of the Lanarkshire Firm Base, which was the group that was set up to coordinate the activities under the covenant. And this is a north-south joint partnership with representatives from community planning partners, the NHS and all the forces charities are represented on that group as well. That meets roughly 3 times per annum. The Council also appointed an Armed Forces Covenant Duty Champion, and that person currently is Councillor Horsham. Section 4 of the report really sets out what the Armed Forces Covenant Duty under the new Act is. The Covenant Duty in Section 4.2 explains that it requires organisations delivering local services to pay due regard to the Covenant principles when exercising their functions in the areas of housing, education and healthcare. This is similar to what we're expected to do for the Fairer Scotland duty and the Equalities duty. You have due regard to these when you're making new policies or strategies. You will note that I haven't mentioned employment because that is not part of the Act. However, this Council, when it signed up to the duty, said that it would add employment, veterans' employment, to what we were going to do, as well as these other duties. In particular, under the Act, the services covered are housing and technical resources, and you have the details there in section 4.3.1, education resources, and that's set out in 4.3.2 of the Act, of the report, and health and social care, which is Council and NHS Lanarkshire, and that is in 4.3.4. Each of these areas have their own resource champions to take the lead in that and coordinate any response within their resource. The Council has been working hard to recognise and address the circumstances of veterans and members of the armed forces. And for the first time this year, you will see there is an annual report at Appendix 1 of the report, which is pages 25 to 35 of the report, which sets out what we actually have done in the course of 2023 to meet the Covenant duty. There's also been a new role profile published for local government armed forces champions, and this has been drafted to reflect the terms of the legislation, the associated guidance, and there is a toolkit as well that the champion and resources can rely on to go back into, to drill down and find out what we have to do. This is being presented for adoption by the Council for consideration and adoption today. If you want to do that, it's recommended that we do, so that there is a consistent approach right across the UK for the role of the Armed Forces Champion. Taking you back to the recommendations within the report, which are in section 2.2, the Council is asked to note the new Armed Forces Covenant duty, to note that the Lanarkshire Firm Base Group renamed itself during 2023 the Lanarkshire Armed Forces Covenant and Veterans Covenant Group, and they did that because they felt that that was more understandable than the Firm Base Group. Firm Base was an old name that is an army term. That the content of our first report, the 2023 annual report at Appendix 1 is noted, and that the updated Armed Forces Champion role profile at Appendix 2 is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Geraldine. As you're aware, Councillor Horsham is the Armed Forces Veterans Champion, and I wondered whether you wish to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Provost. Yeah, no, I certainly welcome this report coming forward. As you know, I was a veteran myself, and we work hard within South Lanarkshire, colleagues as well, to make sure that our veterans are recognised. And I would like to thank colleagues. I would like to thank the organisations that we work with, the Armed Services Advice Project, SAFA, you know, and when I was first elected, there was nothing. It had fell away, the firm-based group, or what it was called. And the reason behind that, it was army-led. It was nothing to do with the councils at all. Now we have 40 members, over 40 members within this group now, and we work well together. It's certainly a partnership, and there's more things coming up. You know, we've got a plan for the next year, which we'll present at the council. One of them's having a website, one of them's having a proper booklet that we can hand out. We're looking at the employment situation, because I know that's been a concern with my colleagues. So we're going to take these things forward and work with our partners to make sure that we're at the fore within South Lanarkshire, delivering for our veterans and the Armed Forces community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horsham. Councillor Andrea Cowan.
Thanks, Provost. I really just, along similar lines to Mark, just wanted to welcome this report, and I also just wanted to say how good a job South Lanarkshire appear to be doing so far, and you know that their results when dealing with veterans are above average for other councils. So that's great. I know there's always been a policy, especially in housing, around veterans. And good to know what Geraldine said, that we've added employment opportunities, which goes above our obligations. So really just to say how pleased we are that this is happening. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cowan. Councillor Joe Fagan.
Thank you, Provost. Very little to add to that, and I appreciate both what Councillor Horsham's update and Councillor Cowan's comments. I think the observation I would like to make is that this agenda has evolved and become so much more multifaceted since the initial days of appointing veterans champions and even the initial days of the Armed Forces Covenant. I've met a number of interesting people through the years, not least through the work that we did in awarding the Freedom of South Lanarkshire to the Royal Regiment, and also through the connections and the networks that Councillor Horsham has brought to the council. And I think the point that always strikes me is that this is so much more multifaceted, it is now increasingly recognised as being an agenda. It's about housing and employment and social work and education and health and social care. It's also not just about the forces, it's about the forces community and forces families around them. And I would like to pay tribute myself to the work that Councillor Horsham has done now over a number of years to continue to champion this agenda in South Lanarkshire on behalf of the administration. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fagan. Councillor Alec Allison.
Thanks, Provost. I think it's good to see this report and like to associate with all other remarks that have been made regarding work with the armed forces. But I would like to ensure that this is just seen as a starting point and not an end point, because getting particularly jobs into the council has not been as quick as what some of us would maybe have liked, but it is happening, and let's hope we can do more of it. I think there is one major omission really from this report, and that is to fully highlight the work that Councillor Horsham does as spokesman for the veterans. I think it could be very much a very lonely role, because he does not have a committee to tell him what to do. Now, whether that's a positive or a negative, I'm not very sure. But the fact that he does that, and as much work has been done, I think needs to be recognised. And our thanks go to him very much for doing that work. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't help but not mention Councillor Jim Handybode at this point. I had a flashback there of Jim going around the office with two pairs of glasses on, his sunglasses on the top of his head and his glasses on his eyes. But Jim was the forerunner to Mark, and well known in the Armed Forces circle. I just wanted to mention Jim this morning because I think that Jim would be very proud of the way I've seen it over the last 13 years, the way things have progressed since Jim was our Armed Forces champion. So he handed the reins over to a good, strong person in Mark that's been taking it forward on our behalf. Councillor Robert Brown.
Thank you very much, Provost. I just wanted myself to join in welcoming the report. As it happens, my daughter-in-law works for Veterans First as a psychologist, so I've got some inside knowledge to a very minor degree of the work that's done there. But it's also, actually, I think, noteworthy just how many veterans and veterans' families there are in South Lanarkshire. I think it sometimes goes below the radar, and the figures, for example, about the school numbers and things are really quite impressive. It's all against the background, of course, of the work that's been done by the veterans themselves to make the country safe and so on and so forth. And I do think, as others have said, that the work that Mark Horsham has done in taking forward this agenda has been very praiseworthy and has managed to end up, if you like, with a really significant and strong partnership, which I think bodes well for the future. It's great to see South Lanarkshire leading in this, as in so many other things, but in this matter in particular, I think we're punching above our weight on the matter, and that's very much due to those who've been involved in the project. Thanks very much. Thanks,
Councillor Brown. Colleagues, if you'll forgive me, I'm a wee bit at sixes and sevens this morning. I'm going to backtrack or forward track to item 10, which is our urgent business. Can we agree the last report, please? Agreed, thank you. So I'm backtracking at this point to item 10, which is urgent business. Yesterday, late afternoon, I received a request from Councillor Cowan for an emergency motion. It makes some points that many of us in this room would agree with. Indeed, at our last council meeting, we all joined together to show sympathy for the suffering being experienced in that tragic conflict when we observed a minute's silence. And I'm sure you recognise that I'm talking about the issues in Palestine and Israel. So no one has a monopoly on sympathy for the people affected by this conflict, either in Gaza or in Israel. However, the position remains the same as it did when Councillor Cowan proposed a similar emergency motion at the last council meeting. It's very straightforward. The resolution of international conflict is not a matter for political debate in this chamber. We have plenty of business to attend to on behalf of our constituents, the people of South Lanarkshire. Yes, they also may have strong opinions on the conflict, but they have opportunities outside this chamber to express them, and so do we. Each political party has the opportunity to write to their own party leaders and to other party leaders to express their feelings in this regard. So I'm therefore not going to allow this emergency motion this morning or open up a political debate in South Lanarkshire Council. This debate should be had at a much higher level, and if you wish to contribute to that debate, please feel free as groups to take your political debate to your political leaders, no matter which party they're from. So thank you for that, and we'll move on now to item 5 in the agenda. Councillor Cowan wishes to say a few words.
Okay, sorry, and thanks, Provost. Obviously disappointed again that we're not getting a chance to speak about the crisis in Gaza. The reason that I brought this forward again is because of there has been a change in circumstances since I last tried to do this, given that the International Court of Justice has ruled on the case brought by South Africa regarding the genocide in Israel, in Gaza. And so I'm, as I say, again disappointed. And, you know, every time there's a change, we'll bring this back. I hear what you're saying about this not being a matter for council, but I think this is a matter for everybody. And that's our position. And as I say, every time there's a change in the circumstances, we'll just be bringing this back. Thank you.
Can I just remind people that this was brought forward at the last full council meeting, and at that time I made a statement on behalf of a number of us in the room and made a decision and a declaration at that point. There's been a significant amount of time has passed since the last full council meeting, and that time has given the opportunity to bring forward motions on whatever topic you wish to bring it forward. And I don't feel that this needed to come forward as an emergency motion. There was significant time to prepare a motion had you wished to do that, and taking guidance from Geraldine McCann on that. So again, I've declared that we're not going to have a debate on this. I do not see that matter changing in the foreseeable future, but I will not deny the right of councillors to bring forward a motion or an emergency piece of business if they see fit. Councillor Robert Brown.
Provost, I mean, I take your point about the urgency of particular motions under the Council's rules. There's obviously ways of doing these kind of things. But I'd like to be clear that it's still competent to lodge motions which relate to international matters sparsely. I think it's fair to say we don't want to be dominated by these issues all the time if they're lodged in due time and with the proper support.
Yeah, I think that's what I said, Robert. I feel that motions on an international basis can be and have been brought forward in the past. I mean, the strong preference would be that we bring forward motions that have a direct influence on how the council operates in South Lanarkshire and things that we can actually, in South Lanarkshire, affect for the greater good of our constituents. I think when you're bringing forward a motion, you should consider the various tiers of government and where it's best placed for such motions to be debated at a political level. And I'll leave it at that. Geraldine McCann.
Thank you, Provost. I'd wanted to clarify to Councillor Brown what Councillor Brown had previously said. The provision still exists under Standing Order 20 to give notice in advance, and that's 10 clear days of the meeting, and it's 10 clear working days of the meeting. So if the motion had come in at that time, it would have been on the agenda today, because it would have been competent for you to consider it. However, as it wasn't, that's why it's not on the agenda, and members do have the right to ask for urgent business, but it is the Provost's decision whether to allow urgent business to be debated in terms of standing orders, and that is Standing Order 4C, which says the business must be known about at the start of the meeting, and it's the Provost's decision.
Okay, I'm going to stop the discussion now with Geraldine. No, I'm not. I have made a decision as the Provost. Who do you wish to clarify the points with?
So it's not to clarify, it's to make a clarification.
It's perfectly clear, the 10-day ruling. We all understand that.
Well,
and
it's actually not perfectly clear. It says 10 clear days.
No.
It says 10 clear days in the standing orders. It's not saying 10 clear working days. You put in a motion 10 clear days before. And I accept that you're taking it to mean working days, but that's not the wording that's in the standing orders, I believe.
Point of order.
Just a second.
It's appropriate. I think you've made a decision. You should move on. Thank you.
made a decision on this. I'm moving on. I'm not taking this as urgent business. I've explained, and so has Geraldine, how this can be brought forward as a motion in the future. And if you wish to clarify any further legal points or standing orders on it, I would ask you to do that out with the meeting with Geraldine McCann's office. So thank you for that. And we're now moving on to item 5 on the agenda, the council membership, pages 41 to 44. And I'm going to invite Geraldine to speak on this.
Thank you, Provost. The report is to advise of a recent change to the composition of the Council following the resignation of Councillor Horsham from the SNP group and the proposed allocation of committee places. It is routine after such an event to look again at the percentages of committees. As members will be aware, it is there is no legal requirement that the council committees reflect the political balance of the council. However, this council has decided to do so and always has done so where it is reasonably practicable. And this also applies not just to committees but to forums, joint boards and outside bodies. The political composition of resource committees, planning committee, risk and audit, recruitment committee and the planning local review body remains unchanged, and as does most of the forum membership. And it's therefore proposed that those places that were previously filled by Councillor Horsham are allocated in this instance to the SNP group. However, as section 4.3 of the report points out, there is now an equality in percentage entitlement for both the Labour and the SNP groups, and this doesn't equate to a full number and requires to be rounded up or down in terms of appointments. And the committees affected are shown at the bullet points in 4.3. You'll note that the last two of these, the Equal Opportunities Forum and the Standards and Procedures Advisory Forum, have asterisks against them. And these are because all groups are already represented in these forums, and the percentages in those forums have never been calculated exactly in terms of places. As the SNP originally had the highest amount of members, they benefited from getting their entitlement, and there was no capacity to increase Labour. In the past, within this council, it has always been custom and practice to grant any unfilled spaces on committees, forums or boards to the ruling group. But there has never been a situation before where the two largest groups on the council have an equality of numbers or a percentage entitlement. There has been incidences where the percentage entitlement is below, it's been, say, for example, 1.3. In that instance, the additional place is always awarded to the ruling group, and that has been custom and practice in this council. Given that it is put before council for approval today that the additional places is given following the usual practice to the ruling group. Any alternative proposal today, if council does not wish to go with that, or there is an alternative put forward, it would have to be proposed and seconded, and that would be put to the vote. In the event of an equal number of votes, standing orders would apply, and that would mean that the chairperson, the provost in this instance, would have the casting vote. The various changes to the other committee memberships are all listed in the recommendations, and these are recommendations 1 to 12 of that in the recommendations. Recommendations 13 and 14 are the ones that I've referred to, where there's an equality in percentage entitlement. Recommendation 14, as usual, recommends that once council has taken their decision today, the actual membership, so who will fill that place, will be delegated to the chief executive in consultation with the leaders of the relevant political groups to finalise the members of those bodies listed. Thank you, Provost.
Could I ask if we can agree stage 1 of the report, which is to confirm that members approve the SNP group membership changes as detailed in recommendations 2 to 12. Can we agree that? Thank you. We're now moving on to stage 2 of the report, and Councillor John Ross.
Yes, thanks very much, Provost, for letting me speak on this item. Earlier on this week, I had a meeting with the leader of the council, and at that meeting, we both thought, because of the unprecedented situation presented to us, whereby this has never, as Geraldine pointed out earlier, this has never happened before, that we thought that this should be a standing orders situation, and that the vacant spots that were left at this present time should be left to the business managers of the Labour and SNP groups, but that the matter should be referred to the Standing Orders Committee so that clarity is there going forward. Geraldine has said that this is unprecedented. It's never been done before. I don't see how at that time we can go to custom and practice, because there's never been custom and practice for this present situation. It was always given to the ruling group because the ruling group had the most members. This is not the case in this situation. And I would like to move, Provost, that this item be referred to the Standing Orders Committee for clarity going forward, and that the vacant places are left to the business managers of the SNP and Labour group to decide on who should be awarded these places. Thank you very much.
Do you have a seconder for that? Yep. Yeah, well, Councillor Joe Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Provost, and thank you to the Chief Executive and Geraldine McCann as the Monitoring Officer for helping me work through this paper. This is unprecedented, and I have, on that I certainly agree with Councillor Ross. And the issue for me, and on this point before we proceed, it might be useful before we go into any vote just to have some clarification from Geraldine for the Chamber. But the issue for me, and the point I made to Councillor Ross when we spoke on the phone, was that if any change agreed today requires a 2/3 majority under the standing orders, and there is not a 2/3 majority, and bear in mind that both of the parties affected by this, the Labour and SNP groups, both have more than 1/3 of the council, then it's very unlikely that the council would reach a decision today. The clarification that I have, and that I think it would be beneficial to relay to the council to whole, is that that is not the case, and that we can resolve this through a simple vote today. If that is the case, then the way to resolve this today would seem to me, and the preference from my group, is simply that on that point about giving consideration as to whether the rounding up of places is allocated to the ruling group, we would move that in those instances it is allocated to the ruling group, and we believe it could be resolved through a simple vote today. That said, I take the point that this is highly unusual. It's not happened before that the ruling group and the opposition group have been tied in numbers in this way, and I can understand that the council may wish to consider that further, and that the Standards and Procedures Advisory Forum may wish to consider that further. But in terms of resolving this today, I would simply move that the rounding up of spaces is allocated to the ruling group.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Robert Brown.
I just wanted to ask Provost about the position of Councillor Horsham on all of this, because he at the moment has been moved off the committees because of the change in the allocations and the SNP obviously taking up the places. But bearing in mind the rights of minority members in the council, and I've been in that position quite frequently over my political lifetime, is Councillor Horsham going to be left with any committees or any standing on these matters? I think that's actually an issue that we need to look at as well. Not sure what his preferences are in that regard, but I don't think he should be just pushed to one side, if I can put it that way, in terms of these allocations.
I've experienced the same position as you, Councillor Brown, and I know that we've negotiated in the past as independents and Liberal Democrats to give a fair share of places across. We've also got a member of the Green Party here, which is also a minority that's taken into consideration, and you know, it's difficult to make sure that everybody gets a fair representation across the different committees. I'm going to ask Geraldine for advice.
Thank you, Provost. If we take Councillor Horsham to begin with, as Councillor Horsham is not a member of a political party, he is an independent. His entitlement is limited unless Council decide otherwise to a membership of the full Council and the Area Committee in which he is, or potentially one of the divisional licensing boards. If, for example, there is only 10 members within a particular divisional licensing board area, he would automatically get one of those places. If there is more, then he wouldn't automatically get one of the places. But there has been situations in the past where there are vacant places on committees, and because of one reason or another, the particular groups can't fill them, then it is opened up to the independents, or as a negotiation has taken place, and that's what Councillor, the Provost and Councillor Brown's referring to. That's what happened in the past, and members from the independents or the minority parties were given the opportunity to take up these places. Going to the more meatier question, there is nothing in standing orders. A standing order would not be breached for the Council to take this decision today. It doesn't need 2/3 majority to take a decision to agree the percentages and to agree what's in the recommendations. It would be a majority only of the Council that would need to do it. And although it is not written in the standing orders, it has always been the practice within this Council that if a percentage has to be rounded up or down, then the benefit of it is given to the ruling group. That would require a change in standing order if you wanted to move away from that and do something different today, but it's within the Council's decision. You can take the decision whatever the Council democratically decides today. If you wanted to look at standing orders in more detail, then the opportunity will arise during the mid-term review of standing orders, which will be happening 24-25. That will be done, and the standards procedures and advisory forum will be involved in that, and will bring recommendations back to the Council.
Councillor Allocation.
Yeah, Provost, it was very much along the same lines as Councillor Brown as to whether this would be an opportunity to allow Councillor Horsham to have a fuller part in the activities of the Council. I do hear what Geraldine's saying about it in standing orders, but I don't think she's said anything about it being impossible to do that, and therefore I think we should be considering, certainly in some of those areas, of making use of them, because there are others here. Sorry, Kirsten, yourself, who's a single person and is represent and does get a chance to be represented in some groups, and I think it would be wrong for others to be left out of that, and I think we should definitely be considering how that can be done.
Just as an observation, the spreadsheet that normally comes out from clerical services usually shows where there's an opportunity for an independent, a Green or a Lib Dem. That's the way we've always had it in the past. and it's usually, up to now, it's been a nice debate between the three groups, a sort of quid pro quo. To be fair, Robert Brown wants everything, but we've beat him down over the years and tried to get a fair selection there. And I might suggest that if it's possible that spreadsheet comes out and it's indicative of the fact that we've got an independent who would be in the mix there with the Lib Dems, the Independents, the Greens and the Independent. And then that debate would be down to the business managers of those four groups or parties or whatever we wish to call them at this stage. And that gives an opportunity for Councillor Horsham to get the chance to come to be part of other committees. I would warn you in advance that it's always an opportunity to get rid of something that you're not very keen on. And it's last one in usually gets the last horse that nobody wants to gallop. So we'll just warn you of that in advance, and look out for Councillor Brown. He's a good person at debating why he should be on certain committees. He's always won up to now. So I think that's a way of taking that forward, and that Councillor Horsham gets an opportunity to be party to that discussion within the smaller groups. I've got Councillor Ross wishes to speak again.
Thanks very much, Provost. I'm just wondering if we could possibly ask yourself what rationale you possibly used to come to the conclusion that custom and practice should still be used for an item that has never come up like this before. It's always been given to the ruling group because they had the most number of people. In this case, it's exactly the same. And I don't understand the rationale that allows you to say that it should still be given to the ruling group.
Thank you, Provost. No, the rationale was it was a calculation of the percentages that I referred to. So if the calculation of the percentages showed like less than 5%, if it was 10.1 or 10.2, and that overall left a vacant place in a committee, the vacant place went to the ruling group. The situation you have here is you've got a quality of numbers, that you've got the percentages working out roughly the same. So the rationale will still be there will be a vacancy, and my advice would be to follow the custom and practice, and it goes to the ruling group. However, it's for members today to take the decision on whether or not that's what you want to do. And that could go to a vote if there was an alternative put forward for Council to consider.
Thanks very much, Provost. Provost, the amendment I put forward does not preclude the idea that the two largest groups could consider the comments made today about places for those who don't have places at the present time. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a far more democratic way of moving forward than that put forward by the administration in their thoughts today. Thanks.
It's difficult to agree with that, Councillor Ross, in so much as you're asking an independent who has made themselves independent for a reason to align themselves with either the ruling group or with the opposition group.
Well, that's not what I was saying, Provost. I was saying that the two groups...
Hold on a minute, one at a time, please. OK, Councillor Ross.
The two groups getting together to look at the vacant positions, they could consider positions going to those groups that we said that we don't feel are represented in Council today. That was my only thought. Thanks.
Yeah, the difficulty with that is I can see how there could be affiliations to certain groups by doing it that way, whereas with us as independent smaller groups, that debate's had round the table about the places that are available, and it's nothing to do with affiliating yourself with any particular group. It's to do with where you feel your strengths and your interests most lie in representing the people of South Lanarkshire. And I feel that's a fair way of operating. Anyway, can I move to Andrea Cowan now, please?
Thanks, Provost. I just wanted to say that Geraldine said several times negotiation, and you yourself, Provost, have said that, you know, there have been past negotiations around these situations for the independent groups and the small minority groups. There hasn't been any negotiation here, and it is unprecedented. So surely the solution is for the business managers to get together and negotiate. That would be much more democratic than the ruling group just taking all the places for themselves. And those negotiations could include representation from the independents if they wanted to put themselves forward. I think that would be much more democratic and would serve the people of South Lanarkshire far better. Thank you.
Yeah, are you putting that forward as a motion?
Yes, that's what John put forward that motion that this be, in the first instance, this be referred to the Standing Orders Forum at the mid-term for a decision going forward. But in the meantime, the business managers of both the Labour Group and SNP Group get together and discuss the vacant places.
Right. Okay, so I've got two. I'm not taking any more points unless it's absolutely crucial to the Councillor Brown. I think it is actually. Okay.
Thank you very much. I mean, I do think it's actually a bit rich of the SNP group, who are basically in this motion knocking Councillor Horsham off everything in sight, to then start to be a bit precious about the whole thing. But leaving that aside, I think the way forward on this one, I think the argument for having the lead group, if I can put it that way, it's not really the ruling group in a partnership administration, but the lead group, is because business of the council has to be done. And therefore, the small advantage that this gives, and it is a small advantage, is the right way to do it, to give the lead group, if you like, the one that's in administration, the benefit of the kind of the balance on this particular one. However, having said that, I think it's perfectly possible within the rules as you've described that the discussion that then takes place on the remaining places should be a matter which gives reasonable cred to Councillor Horsham's position and the ability to allow him to play his full part as an elected member in the business of South Lanarkshire Council. I hope that's a helpful contribution on the whole.
I think that reverts back to the way that we've operated.
Yes.
Well, I suppose that's custom and practice as it's been over the last term and at the start of this term when we sat down as the smaller parties or groups and negotiated the positions that we had that were made available to us on the spreadsheet that came out. And I don't see that changing. I think we're going to have to revert to that position. I'm not going to take any more comments. I want to move to a vote. Okay.
As the acting business manager for the SNP group, I was in discussions with Councillor Horsham, and where possible, if these are SNP places that we have to reallocate, and that's been done, but it's been done in discussion with Councillor Horsham, and where he expressed an interest in keeping a place, as in the Clydesdale Sports Council, the SNP conceded that point to Councillor Horsham because we want to be inclusive. And we want to satisfy these conditions that are left through democratic negotiation. Thank you.
Okay, I've just one final comment on that. It's easy to be, you are being inclusive, but you brought forward the first section of this report here, which changed all of the places over to SNP members, and you didn't retain Councillor Horsham in any of those. Most of those are the decision-making committees within the council. So I'm maybe wrong, but I haven't seen Councillor Horsham represented in any of the SNP's decision-making committees. So I'm now going to move to a vote here. We have the motion as put down by Councillor Ross, and we have the amendment from Councillor Fagan. You want to remind folk of those, Susan? Alec.
Provost, I was looking to make a motion which I hope it's along the lines of what Councillor Brown was saying as well, which I agree with. So why do not we give the role of the administration to fill these posts, taking into account Councillor Horsham's position? Simple as that. The administration fill the posts, but taking into account Councillor Horsham.
I think that's only complicating matters, Councillor
I think
Allison.
it's simplifying it.
We've got a clearly laid out operational model that we've used in the past before we found ourselves in this position. And, you know, that's where the Lib Dems, ourselves as independent group, etc., have negotiated round a table. That would now include our Green Party and Councillor Horsham to sort out the very few places that are actually allocated to us amicably between those groups. And I can't for the life of me see any reason why we would change that. So really, my preference would be, unless you're making that a formal motion and somebody's seconding it, then, you know, I prefer to move with the motion we've got from Councillor Ross and the amendment from Councillor Fagan. Okay, so we've now got a further amendment. Councillor Fagan.
Provost, I'm a bit concerned that what we're fundamentally trying to agree here is how do you deal with the issue of a tie, and we have then ended up spending a considerable amount of council time discussing a whole range of scenarios that don't necessarily relate to the issue of how you address, how you deal with a tie. So a number of councillors have spoken about the procedures and the engagement that takes place amicably amongst parties in order to ensure that everyone the council and the committees that we have are fulfilling their democratic duty. That is not going to change. And can I say to Councillor Allison and the Conservative group, there's no need for an amendment because that situation is not going to change. The issue in front of us is how do we deal with a tie? Can we deal with this issue of a tie today through a simple vote in the council, which incidentally I think is the most democratic way possible when it comes to resolving a dispute of this kind, or do we deal with this at a later point? There are merits, I completely accept there are merits in both scenarios. The reason I'm putting forward the scenario that I am and the solution that I am is that I think the alternative took on significance if standing orders meant the council was incapable of reaching a decision today. The council is not incapable of reaching a decision today because this will not require a two-thirds majority. It will require a simple majority of the council. We have a custom and practice. We can apply it to this instance of how we break a tie, and the commitment that I can give to the smaller groups, as it were, is that the way in which things have the business has been conducted in the past is the way that we'll continue. I simply want to resolve the issue of how we address a tie today.
Councillor Allison, you still...
Yeah, sorry, because I disagree slightly. The paper we're looking at today is allocation of places today. It's not about changing standing orders or anything else. And therefore, my motion is about how we deal with the issue today. Whether we need to change standing orders in the future as to how there is a draw, if you like, is a discussion for another paper. Aye. So my point is that, quite simply, the administration has the job here of doing it, but have to take into account Councillor Horsham.
So you're basically voting for the administration to get the extra place?
But to take Councillor Horsham into...
Well, I think we've got a guarantee. What everybody's taken into account, and we have up to now functioned as a council in the minority aspect of it by taking everyone into account to ensure that we all get a fair crack at the whip and that Councillor Brown doesn't get all the positions that he wants. And while I'm in that small group arguing for it, I'm sure we can make sure that Councillor Horsham gets his fair shout on the mixture of committees that we are able to access anyway. So I'm going to ignore your motion if you don't mind. Because you're basically saying the same.
They don't even have 64, it's 63.
Are you happy with that arrangement?
No, that's Davy and Mark's not on there.
Are you happy with that arrangement?
No, because if you look at your own papers, you're ignoring a councillor. Current council breakdown is only numbering 63 councillors. So, no, it needs to be highlighted that we do not leave one councillor adrift.
It took account of 64. Okay. Hang on.
We're going round in circles here, and I'd just like clarity. I mean, I've been in this council a long time. I go back to the time where Graham Horn and others and Bert Thompson were independents, and they had to form a group as independents to get recognition and on committees. Latterly, I joined the group that yourselves in, Provost, to get a recognition as a political group. We signed documents to say that we're a political group, and my understanding, the reason we did that, and the reason that Bert Thompson and Graham Horn and the rest of it before did it, was formed a group, was to get recognition, and that's what is required by the legislation. There's no right for any individual independent to be given allocated places. If they want to join a group, they're welcome to do that. But we seem to be going round in circles, and no disrespect to Mark. He's chosen not to join a political group, whatever standing, and you need to go with that. You need to go with the flow with that, because that has been the custom and practice in this council, and my understanding that is what the legislation says, and maybe Geraldine can clarify that. Thanks.
Geraldine.
Thank you. Councillor Watson is correct. It's not in the legislation because that part of the Act was never brought into force. However, this council has always done it where reasonably practical. It has awarded in accordance with the political groupings. However, there has been situations where the political groupings haven't been able to fill their places and it's been opened up. And that's where the negotiation part came in. It's been opened up to either the independents or the independent. And there are situations where in the past you've maybe seen there are two places up for grabs, and it's been put down as Liberal Democrats, independents and independent, and then the leaders of the two groups and the independent get together to see if they can reach a solution through negotiation. But principally, places are allocated where reasonably practical in accordance with the political groups.
Right, colleagues, I need to take a 5-minute break for the BSL users, and I'm hoping that I'll give you the opportunity to clear your head, and we'll come back and get a clear way forward with this. So 5-minute break, please. Yes, what's your point?
Provost, you had said no more points and then took 2 from Councillor Allison bypassing me, another from Councillor Fagan to bypass me, a 9 point of order from Councillor Watson as well. I believe I was in order to speak well before them.
I've heard your point of order, Councillor Fagan.
In an effort to resolve this issue before the next ice age, I would like to just clarify that in terms of the comments I've made before, it's always been the case that there is engagement with the smaller groups. I should perhaps clarify that includes independent councillors not affiliated to smaller groups when it comes to filling these spaces with the larger groups, as the monitoring officer has said, are unable to fill spaces. I can give the assurance to Councillor Allison and to the council that that will continue. The purpose in my amendment is simply to try and break the deadlock and move this issue forward. And I hope that clarification is helpful.
Thank you.
Can I ask why you're accepting multiple extra points from both the Labour, Conservative groups and your own group, but refusing SNP ones?
Motion or not. So it's as the chair here, I decide how the meeting runs and what order I take people in and whether their contribution is going to make a change to the following part of the running of the meeting. Are you wishing to make a point that's going to substantially change the motion that has been put by Councillor Ross or the amendment by Councillor Ross?
Well, it's another point of clarification. Nothing from many of the points made already didn't add anything to the motion.
But you're not going to change the amendment that Councillor Ross brought forward?
No, but you yourself allowed extra points of debate from other parties, but not SNP councillors.
I think you've got this bugbear about me not allowing SNP to speak, and I totally am averse to you saying that. Everybody gets an opportunity to speak.
Well, I'm not.
And yes, you're getting speaking at the moment. You've made 2 points of order. I've taken them. I'm overruling you, and I'm asking Susan to come forward now because your point is not going to substantially change the amendment that Councillor...
Did Councillor Watson substantially change it? We accepted that.
That's enough. Okay, Susan.
Thank you. Can I just check after the break that everyone's reinserted their cards since we're going to the vote? Because I think there's maybe 1 or 2 have dropped off. In terms of the motion put before you today is proposed by Councillor Fagan and seconded by Councillor Convery, and that's that the rounding up of places to Labour as a ruling group, that's awarded to them, but also taking account obviously of some of the more minority groups. And the amendment by Councillor Ross, seconded by Councillor Shearer, is that the matter is referred to the Standards and Procedures Advisory Forum. It would not, however, preclude comments in terms of places to the minority groups, but he's suggesting in the meanwhile that there's negotiation between the 2 business managers of SNP and Labour Group to fill those places until such times as it goes to the Standards and Procedures Advisory Forum. So I'm just about to activate the electronic vote. So
wait a minute. Can I just raise something, Provost? Should it not be the other way about? The motion was raised by myself and the amendment by the Labour Group, not the way that it's been put forward.
in terms of the recommendation in the papers, Councillor Ross, it said to give consideration to the places going to the ruling group. Therefore, the recommendation in the paper becomes it's a motion, and you have suggested an alternative to going to the ruling group. So therefore, that becomes the amendment. Okay, so if everyone's happy, I'll just activate the vote of motion versus amendment. So for those in the room, please press firmly on your choice. Once you've voted, the colour in your option box should infill. So blue for motion, red for amendment and orange for abstain. It'll also state in your microphone unit screen that your vote is registered. For those remote, again, the appropriately coloured box will appear in the right-hand side of your screen, showing how you have voted once your vote has actually registered.
One for Joe Fagan. Blue.
As is the motion, so it's blue. Yeah. So it's saying that one member still has to vote. Provost, that's all the votes in. So I'm just going to stop the voting. So we have 31 have voted for the motion, 26 for the amendment, and 2 members have abstained. The motion is therefore declared carried.
Okay, if you can turn now to pages 45 and 46, South Lanarkshire Nature Emergency. Councillor Brobb.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is still morning, isn't it? Thank you, Councillor Clark, for seconding this motion and the SNP for their support as well. I'd also like to thank South Lanarkshire community groups and individuals that have emailed their councillors to support this motion, and also officers for conversations about it as well. So I'm bringing this motion to raise awareness of the nature emergency, and most importantly to support more local action on it at the scale and pace this emergency demands. With councillors' backing, South Lanarkshire can show political leadership on this issue. With your support, we can back the council to be ambitious and proactive so citizens and the environment alike can reap the benefits. Rather than quoting the Lorax, I think I'll paraphrase Monty Python. What did nature ever do for us? Clean air, water, soil, food materials, the economy, carbon storage. Let's go a bit deeper, add health, inspiration, culture, tourism, recreation. The World Economic Forum shows that over half the world's total GDP is potentially at risk because of the dependence of business on nature and its services. So nature is interconnected and we humans are part of it. The stats are undeniable and show that there is a nature emergency. It's declining like never before due to human activities. And with it, so are our life support systems too. So you see, aside from nature being beautiful and having a right to share our planet, it's in our own self-interest to protect and restore it. The good thing is we know what to do. We know what we need to do. To protect and restore nature, we need to manage land and waters differently on a landscape scale. We need to work in partnership to develop connected nature networks. Creating a mosaic of different habitats will achieve the objectives we want for people and nature. We can manage our grasslands differently, cut pesticide use, stop using peat, cut light pollution from buildings, and find natural alternatives to fake lawns, and so much more. As the dominant species on this planet, as well as the one causing the problems, we have a responsibility to act. And action is happening. With the Nature Restoration Fund, National Planning Framework and the Scottish Biodiversity Strategy, action is happening. The aim is to stop the destruction of nature by 2030 and restore nature by 2045. In South Lanarkshire, thousands of citizens volunteer their time to help nature and improve their green spaces, often supported by the Council's Countryside and Green Space team. Volunteers are contributing an average of $474,000 per annum in recent years, and that's an underestimate because we don't know about all the other groups as well that are not reporting that. The Scottish Government are acting, the public are acting. We in South Lanarkshire need to scale up action too. Good news, our local biodiversity strategy is coming. This motion aims to complement this supporting and driving action for nature across the council and across our urban and rural areas too. To deliver on the motion and biodiversity strategy, action on nature needs to be mainstreamed. Every policy, plan and initiative, including Frontline First and even the cuts we're considering, need to support, not undermine, nature recovery. We need to make sure we have the capacity, skills and knowledge to scale up action. New qualifications, as noted in the motion, like the Forestry and Outdoor Learning Award, are being taught in our schools and can be rolled out further to inspire and train the next generation. As councillors, we can learn more about nature's role to help our decision making. Some activities may need to change, and it's all about so vital that we communicate about why, for example, we may be managing some grasslands differently and what benefits those will bring. I was told at the recent South Lanarkshire Sustainability Youth Forum about the anxiety that some young people feel. A person felt anxious about the state of the world. She wants hope. She wants to hear that decision makers see it as an emergency and act on it now. Thousands of others in South Lanarkshire want the same. We are the decision makers now. We must act like it's an emergency. So to conclude, with the impetus of this motion, our local biodiversity strategy and national efforts, we can turn words into real action and change at scale. We will train up current and future generations to work with nature and create new jobs. With a nature-rich local environment, we will have happier, healthier citizens. In South Lanarkshire, we can and must stop the loss of nature and restore our life support systems. Please support the motion.
You have a seconder? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you to Councillor Robb for bringing this motion forward. I'm happy to second it on behalf of the SNP group. Transformative action is needed as we combat biodiversity loss and environmental degradation. This is a global crisis that requires an urgent response from all of us doing our bit. Not only is this tied to the climate emergency and our journey to net zero, there are clear and vital benefits to us all of a healthy ecosystem and society that values biodiversity that Councillor Robb alluded to, such as clean air, a healthy food system, tourism, vibrant communities and many more. It's important that we recognise the great work that has gone on in tackling the nature emergency and promoting biodiversity, both nationally by the Scottish Government and here locally in South Lanarkshire. We have the Nature Restoration Fund, investment in our natural environment, including through the Just Transition Fund, and Scotland is leading the way in the UK in the creation of new woodlands, just to name a few actions. Looking forward, the Scottish Biodiversity Strategy is rightfully ambitious and has an aim for Scotland to be nature positive by 2030 and to have restored and regenerated biodiversity across the country by 2045. It includes a range of actions to help achieve this, but we also need action on a local level to match and realise this ambition. I'm glad the motion recognises the positive work locally, including by our Countryside and Green Space team and those across South Lanarkshire Council. Our communities have played an important part. They should continue to be empowered and involved in the process. And I'm happy to welcome the work and interests from our young people on this through our schools and the youth forum that Councillor Robb mentioned. I know there's positive actions and strategies coming forward, but we should always be pushed to go further and we should be willing to learn more on the topic. That is why I urge all councillors to support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor McGeever.
Thanks very much, Provost, and members will be delighted to know I don't intend to speak for long. It will surprise no one, I think, that there will be broad support for recognising a nature emergency, and certainly on behalf of the Liberal Democrats, that's the position we take, given the force with which we pushed for the Climate Change Committee to be set up and maintained. Having spoken to officers, I understand that they are confident that the aspects of this motion won't that they'll be able to meet it, and that the demands that it places on them won't negatively impact any other good works that have been alluded to by the councillors so far. What I'm about to say should not be taken as any sort of criticism of this motion. I really mean that. It's clear there's a will to create the habitats and food resources needed for wildlife and to protect them as well. But I think regardless of political composition, councils up and down this country will say, well, we don't have the means to do a lot of the things we want to do. And at the risk of mentioning it once again, as we seem to always do now, this really is the crux of everything local government does. Now, this council and others have proven how responsive they can be to emergencies if we look during the pandemic, and I acknowledge the leadership of councillors opposite during that time as well. But if we're hoping that this will result in more than reports, that finding these facts on the ground will then lead to concrete action of the sort that my counterparts mentioned, and I want to see that as well, then we really have to ensure that this council and others have the resources to be able to deliver on that. So I hope that recognition of a nature emergency and the climate emergency that we've recognised before will also, and indeed the cost of living crisis as well, I hope that these things will also be accompanied by a continuing and even more strongly worded and loudly cried recognition that there is a local government funding emergency, and that if we are to enact all the good things that we want to see done, including all of the things that have been mentioned so far by colleagues, then we have got to find a way of securing the means to do it. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor Allison.
Thanks, Provost. I concur with everything that Mark was saying. What comes to my mind, though, with this is that it's a day late and a dollar short. Work within the agricultural community has been ongoing for about 30 years with support from UK and Scottish governments for the likes of not just the natural habitat, but biodiversity, soil health, etc. Been done by hundreds of farmers here in South Lanarkshire, not really been given the accreditation that we should. It should be a positive motion about what is happening, that these things have been addressed, I would have been happier with. What I think it maybe needs to recognise as well, although there are financial issues within the council, the one that is impacting on this most has been the Scottish Government budget, which took £33.6 million out of forestry, which contributes a great deal to the natural wildlife. And they've also, over the last 2 years, borrowed approximately £60 million from the agricultural budget, which deters from the programmes that are addressed, that are being put in place to address these issues. Whereas I can support this, we need to highlight these deficiencies and recognise a great deal of work that has been done for over 30 years now. This is a Johnny-come-lately political statement, not taking anything forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, can we agree the... Agreed. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on now to item 7 on the agenda. Touch a Life, Make a Difference, and I'm excluding myself from this item and the next item, and Bert Thompson will take over as chair.
Thanks, Rose.
Very much there. You'll be happy to know it's only 1 hour for number 7 and number 8, okay? And I'm going to ask straight away to go on the business. Touch Your Life, Make a Difference, and ask Geraldine to speak with, is it? Yes, Geraldine McCann, thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. This report brings a new initiative to the Council for consideration for adoption. The new initiative is Touch a Life, Make a Difference, and the purpose of the initiative is set out in section 3.1 and 3.2 of your report. It is to reach out to local people, school children, groups, businesses and other organisations, to encourage fundraising or fundraising events and activities for local good causes within the community or the wider South Lanarkshire area. It also proposes that each year one beneficiary be recommended as the recipient of those fundraising activities, recognising, of course, that it will be a decision for the local groups, etc., who they fundraise for, but with the recommendation being given. This year it has been suggested that Kilbride Hospice is the beneficiary for 2024. As an adjunct to this, it is proposed that there be a South Lanarkshire Council Roll of Honour for local fundraising and a Provost Charitable Award established to recognise the hard work of the local fundraisers who raise much needed funds, similar to the local community volunteers awards that are currently held, eventually with ward members recommending people within their wards or groups, etc., for inclusion in the Roll of Honour. It's also proposed that a civic reception is held at the end of the calendar year to honour these local fundraisers included in the Roll of Honour. So taking you back to the recommendations in the report, it is recommended that the initiative Touch a Life Make a Difference is approved, that it's approved that Kilbride Hospice be promoted as the beneficiary for fundraising initiatives in 2024, and that a Provost Charitable Award and South Lanarkshire Council Roll of Honour is established to honour local fundraisers. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
I'm going to ask now if any questions or comments. I think Councillor Ross, you're first there.
Yes, thanks very much, Deputy Provost. I think while applauding the general idea behind this initiative, I've certainly got a number of questions which I hope we can answer today. First of all, whose idea was the initiative and who requested that it be put on today's agenda? That's my first question. Second question, local organisations, community groups, local people and school children are continually raising funds for good causes, with many having been involved in supporting their favourite local charities for years. Has the launch of Touch a Life Make a Difference a recommendation one taking these concerns into consideration? And has any thought been given to what would happen if no local organisation decided to apportion an element of their funding raised to the nominated charity? When we already have the Provost Awards, why are we looking to initiate a Provost Charitable Award and South Lanarkshire Roll of Honour at a time when funding in general is very limited? And why are we looking to have a further civic reception over and above that which is in place for the Provost Awards at this present time? And have we any idea of the costs involved in taking these things forward? Thanks very much.
Geraldine, I think you're going to respond.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. The idea was brought to officers by the Provost, and it's officers who asked for it to be included in the agenda because officers prepared the report for committee decision because it was a new initiative and therefore it would require a decision of the Council to take it forward. It would be a recommendation to local local groups, school children, etc., who they would raise their funds for, and the recommendation being Kilbride Hospice this year. It would be their decision whether or not they wanted to do it. The Roll of Honour, etc., that was also proposed by the Provost, but it was included in the officer's paper. That would recognise all fundraisers, local fundraisers put forward, not just anyone fundraising for Kilbride Hospice within the area. And the intention is that the event, the Roll of Honour and the event is met from existing budgets. There would be no new budget. This year, the Provost Awards, etc., is far under way already, the organisation of that. So that's why it would be a separate event this year. However, going forward, you would likely put the two events together, and the Provost Charitable Award and Local Fundraisers Award would be included as one event.
Thank you there. I know, I sort of understand what you're saying. What I'd like to say is local groups, local people, including children, if they'll decide how much in effort and how much money they'd like to donate or contribute to, I'd like to hope that worthy causes put forward the people will be back to some degree. But we're always asked for a lot of money, but I think this one is very good and very worthwhile backing, and it's up to individuals to decide how much they'd like to contribute. Thanks. Councillor Cowie, please. Cowan, sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I just wanted to ask, it's absolutely no criticism of Kilbride Hospice, but I just wondered how the decision to recommend Kilbride as the first beneficiary was arrived at. There's no doubt that they're a fantastic organisation. They provide excellent service. My first-hand experience, my father-in-law spent almost 2 months with them, and the end-of-life care that he received was outstanding. So absolutely no qualms, no problem with Kilbride. However, I also know that they have a professional fundraiser, and I've been to events where Kilbride, you know, at dinners and what have you, and they raise tens of thousands of pounds in one night. And I'm just thinking that perhaps if we're going to recommend a charity, that we should recommend perhaps a smaller, less, if you like, professional charity. So I just wondered how the decision came to decide that it would be Kilbride, when personally I feel that they're very well placed for fundraising already. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I think Geraldine can maybe respond to that, please.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. The recommendation is a suggestion only, and it was put forward by the Provost. However, the decision is Council's decision, and if you wish to recommend another organisation, it's within your gift to do so.
Thank you. Just before I bring Joe in, and I know in the future there'll be opportunities in the future years for other charities and that. The one with Kilbride probably that I can see a lot of merit in is that 1 in 2 people we know suffer with cancer, and you're talking about your own experience there, and it is local in South Lanarkshire, and I personally think it's a good one, but it'll be up to this council to decide if that's the way forward. Councillor Fagan.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Can I just start by saying this council and many members of it have had a long and historic association with the Kilbride Hospice, and if we are introducing a new initiative, I think it is fitting that we consider Kilbride Hospice as one of the first causes that we would seek to support. Can I say that it is quite normal, actually, or at least not unusual, in other authorities for local authorities to have nominated charities or to have provosts as civic leaders have nominated charities. In that sense, the paper that has been brought before us is not unusual at all. I would also make the point that any activity that's undertaken as a result of this paper being approved would have to be funded from within existing resources, as has just been made clear. And very shortly, this council will decide how to deploy its resources when we allocate our budget. So on the basis that there are existing budgets, there is the existing civic budget available to support the programme of events that are a necessary part of civic leadership, then I have no concerns about the financial implications of this paper, because it's made absolutely clear that any activity has to be funded from within existing resources. And given that I'm relaxed about the responses that we've received and the initiative that has been outlined, and given that Kilbride Hospice is a very worthy cause with a very unique association with the members of South Lanarkshire Council, I would simply ask that we move to approve the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you confirm that members approve this recommendation? Are we agreed? Agreed. Sorry. Come in there, John.
Yep. Sorry, Provost. Yeah, I'd like to come back on that. Probably an awful lot of what Joe has said is relevant. An awful lot of councils do have nominated charities. I just think in this situation, where our Provost is actually a board member of the hospice, that it is really unusual that it should come forward on behalf of the Provost. From my point of view, although the initial idea is good, I don't think there's enough background being looked into in this, and I would therefore ask that this be remitted back for further consideration of the points I've already raised, and that would be on behalf of the SNP group.
John, could just ask, are you proposing that as an amendment? Yes.
I'm proposing that as an amendment, yes.
A seconder there. Okay then. I'll bring in Geraldine here. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Just to clarify, the Provost, in her role profile, one of her duties is to be an advocate for the people of South Lanarkshire. So it is appropriate for the Provost to bring things for consideration by the Council, or to ask for things to be brought for consideration by the Council, and that's what she's done today. However, I would stress that it's an officer paper, it's not the Provost paper, and it's before the full Council for consideration.
Yeah, we'll go to the vote then now. Okay, thank you.
Okay, can I just clarify, Councillor Convery, you seconding the motion, Councillor Fagan moved the recommendations in the paper. Councillor Ross, seconded by Councillor Johnson-Dempsey, have moved as an amendment that it is deferred until some further background information is brought forward. I'm just going to activate the electronic vote, so if you can use your keypads again. Again, if you can press firmly and check that the box is infilled. If you're remote, it will show in your right-hand corner. It should confirm that your vote has been taken. We still have 3 members still to vote. Still waiting on a couple of members to cast their vote. Okay, again, can you just check? It should have a sort of broken line round your name, because it's saying that there's still 2 members still to vote. And check your keypads, the colour should infill. We still have 1 member to vote. So it should confirm in your display that it's taken. Or if you're remote, it should say in the right-hand corner that your vote's taken. We still have a member to vote. I'll give a further minute and then I'll close the vote. Oh, maybe it is if her card's still in. Thank you, Councillor Shearer. There, you've confirmed that. Her card's still in. All right, well done. Thank you. Right, okay, I'll close the vote. Okay, we have 32 have voted for the motion and 26 for the amendment. I therefore declare the motion carried. Just a second, right, if you press your button. We're going to leave for this item.
Okay. Yep. Okay, then we're going to an item for noting, and as such, if you feel compelled to say something about it, that's fair enough, but I hope you'd keep it brief and competent. Okay, so Geraldine, could you take us through item number 8, please?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. This paper brings an update on a matter that was considered by the Executive Committee at its meeting on the 22nd of November 2023. And the matter it was considering at that time was a reduction in the number of speculative palliative care beds at Kilbride Hospice. The extract minute from the Executive Committee is shown at 3.1 of the report. And as you will see, in that minute, the committee had decided that the Chief Executive had to write to the Minister for Public Health and Women's Health and the Chair and Chief Executive of NHS Lanarkshire, highlighting the concerns detailed in the motion, and 2, that NHS colleagues had to arrange a briefing session for members on the issues. Since that date, the Chief Executive has received a response from the Minister, and that is outlined in 4.1, and also a members' briefing was organised by NHS Lanarkshire, and this was held on the 19th of January. So the report, as you said, Deputy Provost, is for noting.
Right, that's fine, and thanks very much for that. It's for noting, and nobody's going for to ask a question, so we'll move on. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, can we move on to item 9, the External Auditor's Annual Report? Paul.
Okay, thanks, Provost. This is the External Auditor's Report to the Council. It relates to year 2022-23. What the paper tells you is that this has been to the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee at the end of October, and you can get a copy of the Audit Scotland letter and the report for the Council and for the charitable trusts as well through the links that are included in the paper. It's a bit later than it would be normally. Audit Scotland were working to a slightly longer timescale than in previous years. But in terms of the recommendations, they are, as you can see there at 2.1, that the External Auditor's Annual Report 2022-23 to the Council be noted. Thank you, Provost.
Any questions or comments? Susan Kerr.
Hi, thank you. First of all, could I welcome the report from the External Auditors? It's a really good report. And as a member of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee, I had the opportunity to meet with Audit Scotland. In particular, I'd like to draw members' attention to Section 5 of the report, Vision, Leadership and Governance. You'll note within the main judgments, reference is made to our comprehensive induction training programme, which was successfully delivered, but also that officers should continue to work with elected members to support their training and development requirements to provide effective scrutiny. I wonder if officers have had the opportunity to consider future training support to ensure that members are up to the latest best practice. And in particular, it might be worth considering local government finance for non-financial people and support in the assessment of risk identification and treatment. Thanks.
Thank you. Paul Manning. Sorry, Geraldine McCann.
Provost, I'll come in. Listen.
Hey, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr, for your question. Within the action plan that's at the back of the auditor's report, this is one of the things that we were specifically asked to pick up on. And what it gave an assurance of was that the programme of engagement with members and training would continue. So I've got a specific update on this from the Council's Head of Personnel. So what's proposed is that we look to get more feedback on members' training needs. And what Michelle Milne is going to carry out is a training needs analysis. And that is going to inform the 2024-25 training plan. So Michelle's suggestion is that within that we can offer a range of levels of training for members on subjects including finance. And Michelle's suggestion, among other things, is that we look to get SIPFA, the Public Sector Finance Institute, in to do training, which we had done in the past and which was really well received. And that would target particularly finance for non-finance people. So what we would do in terms of the feedback that we get is base our training plan on that and on your requirements. Now, what I've asked Michelle to do is to undertake that training needs analysis in February so that we've got the information, we can have a dialogue with yourselves prior to the start of the new year. So hopefully that answers that, Councillor.
Any other points, questions? Okay, I'm going to ask Geraldine to, I want to raise a point myself before we close the meeting today. At all of our full council meetings, there's always, I suppose, more controversial papers come forward that require debate and discussion. Some are nodded through because we're all in agreement with them. Others, as that we've seen this morning, there can be quite a bit of discussion and debate. And sometimes I see sneaking in sarcastic remarks about the length of time it takes to get through a particular paper and the discussion and debate that takes place around that. I'm going to ask Geraldine just to remind you of how much time you get to actually speak regarding a motion and how much time you get to ask a question. I don't think there's anything in the standing orders that requires the chair to take a set number of people and the points that they're making. What I do try to do as chair is to be equitable across the room and give people the opportunity from different parties to make their point. Sometimes there's more people in one party than another that have points to make. And sometimes I have to draw a line because the debate has gone on long enough. It isn't helpful to anybody when sarcastic remarks sneak in regarding how long we've spent on a particular paper. In fact, it can actually detract from the paper that they're going to talk about. So, for going forward at our future council meetings, I'm going to see if it helps matters any that I stick rigidly, more rigidly, to the timescales that you're allocated. And I'm going to ask Geraldine just to remind you of those so that you've got that at the back of your mind for our next full council meeting. If anyone has any issues to raise or complaints regarding how long is given to a particular discussion, please feel free to do that with me. You don't need to do it in the chamber. You can do it out with the chamber. You can put it in writing to me. But please try to detract from any sarcasm or any points that you're making that are going to detract from the actual point that was being discussed. So, Geraldine, can you just remind members of the times that they're given, please?
Thank you, Provost. Standing Order 16 in the Standing Orders on Procedures sets that out. So basically, it's if you are proposing or seconding a motion or an amendment, you can speak for up to 5 minutes, and all other speakers can't speak for more than 3 minutes. Standing Order 12 sets out the powers and duties of the Provost, and that applies to the chairperson in any committee as well. The chairperson has to ensure that the agenda business is properly dealt with and clear decisions are reached. And there is a responsibility to ensure that views and opinions of participants are arranged to be expressed if they contribute to the outcomes of the meetings. However, it's the chairperson who has to make that decision and to keep things moving along so that things progress in an orderly fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. I'd ask colleagues to bear that in mind for future meetings. Councillor Dempsey.
Thanks, Provost. I've got a follow-up question on that. How is it determined that a contribution will contribute to the outcome of a meeting if contributions are denied to be heard in the first place?
Geraldine.
Thank you. If there has been a lengthy discussion on anything, then it's for the chairperson to determine if it's something new. And I think the question is asked, are you bringing in something new? If you're not bringing in anything new and the Provost feels that there has been an appropriate level of discussion on it, then the Provost is entitled to bring the debate to a close in terms of our powers and duties.
I hope you'll agree that that's what I try to do as best I can. I look for your cooperation in these matters, and that we don't demonstrate playground behaviour in any of our parties or individual groups, because we are being viewed by the public, and it's important that we show them that we are worthy representatives of them as their councillors in South Lanarkshire. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your morning. Thank you.